Courage begets courage.
Mm,
When you leap and risk and it works out, you continue to leap and risk and assume it will work out. This experience of moving abroad with two children, a
mm.
husband, leaving everything was probably one of the more courageous acts. And I did it and I won. And there's nothing that I now feel like I can't replicate
I
that.
know that this conversation is going to be a game changer for you. You're the kind of person who is curious about what life outside of the United States could be like for you and your family. If you're the kind of person who is curious about what a break from the US could be, it doesn't even have to be like a whole huge commitment. It could be just a little taste. Like, what are we doing? How do we become global citizens? How do we start thinking worldwide for our dreams? Make them ambitious, make them something that can live on multiple continents. This is your girl, okay? This is the person that you want to see.
Narrative so strongly points to other countries, especially in the global south, Latin
Yes,
America, and Africa, as the most terrible places you could ever imagine going. And
yes,
then you go, and almost, universally, you
yes.
can't believe that that's what the indoctrination is.
You're listening to Madam Speaker Says, your no fluff cheat code to becoming the voice everyone listens to. I'm your host, Machochodi. If you've been waiting for a permission slip to straighten your crown and take up space like you invented the blueprint, Madam Speaker Says got you covered. No whispers, no apologies, just you, me, and some bold ass moves. Let's get into it. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm so excited to have you here. I am Machochodi, your host, and today, honey, today you really need to pull up so close because we have a delicious conversation and guest here with us. We are speaking to one of my, when God gives you people in your life and you're like, I know you love me. God, I know you love me because this person walking into my life and being a big sister from far, from near, all of these years has been such a game changer for me. I cannot even describe. And I'm excited because I know that this conversation is going to be a game changer for you. If you're the kind of person who is curious about what life outside of the United States could be like for you and your family, if you're the kind of person who is curious about what a break from the US could be, it doesn't even have to be like a whole huge commitment. It could be just a little taste. Like, what are we doing? How do we become global citizens? How do we start thinking worldwide for our dreams? Make them ambitious, make them something that can live on multiple continents. This is your girl, okay? This is the person that you want to speak to, Alicia DeLia. It is so beautiful to see you and to have you here. Welcome.
I am so happy to see you. And this is such a beautiful chat and conversation that I'm excited to have because I think there is a growing yearning for pathways, both spiritual and emotional and logistical, about this decision. And I'm loving the fact that you're hosting this. Thank you so much. It's a dream to be having this conversation with you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Let's go because I know you and I know some of your amazing roots. You're literally royalty. Okay. This is not hyperbole, folks. If you're in here listening, we're talking to royalty. Tell me about when the seeds were planted for you to think about the world as belonging to you, as something that is not over there, but a place that is yours.
Gosh, I love that question. It has always been that way. So, as you know, my father is Cameroonian. He's a chief in Cameroon. My mother is a, working class Salvadorian immigrant who immigrated to the United States. They met and fell in love in Washington, D.C. in the 70s. And I always had a community of aunties and uncles who were not of blood, but it was this global family that my mother, especially, as my father eventually went back to Cameroon, developed. And so it was always normal to experience life as within a global context with food and sisterhood and a village that my mother had. And then once I started traveling and as being born and raised in Washington, D.C., but every summer going to either Cameroon or El Salvador because it was very important for my family that I understand my roots and understand my culture. And it informed everything. It has informed my work. It has informed the way I view the world. And then, marrying my husband with Middle Eastern and Mediterranean roots, and our kids now going to a European school in Central America. So I think it all feels so normal. And so, like, of course, this is how we would be
Right,
living our life. Yeah.
right, right. Of course, of course, of course, of course. And the and for me that I want to add is thinking about someone like me who might have been listening to this conversation. And if I'm thinking about myself at an earlier iteration, right, when I was a lot younger, and how not obvious this would have seemed to me. I'm from Soweto, I'm from South Africa. I come from a single mom household. And I had huge, like fucking intergalactic dreams. I didn't know how though, right? And I also didn't always feel full access and permission because of capital, which is something I know you're an expert in. So for just a beat, I want to talk about what gave you that kind of permission to see yourself as somebody who belonged on any fucking stage? Like, you can't tell me I'm going to be there, whether it's in else. Of course, going back and forth to El Salvador and Cameroon must have shaped that. But I'm talking about something that's a little bit like a step, maybe below, like just
Yeah.
before that, that is this thing of somebody who's growing up maybe in DC, let's say in Southwest DC, and maybe they do have parents who come from somewhere far away, right? They're an immigrant as well. But yet still, it seems
Right.
so, it seems like other people get to do that, not some gorgeous brown-skinned girl from Southwest DC. You know what I'm saying? Or Soweto.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that, so much of it is mindset. And
Mhm.
quite honestly, my personal story, particularly I would say the Africa side of my story, issues of, race and belonging are very different on the continent. It's almost like you come to America to be shown or to be taught that you're lesser than,
Mm.
or to be, and I think this is different in a South African context and a Cameroonian
Yes.
context. Obviously, you
Yeah.
know, anyway, South Africa mirrors a lot of what we see in the States, but Western and Central Africa, not really. You are
Yeah.
surrounded by Black is beautiful,
Yes.
Black is empowering,
Yes.
Black is everything, doctors, lawyers, entrepreneurs,
Yes.
and you come to America to be told differently.
Yes.
And so as someone who kind of spent so much time on the continent in my early years, I was formed by a feeling, and then, quite frankly, Washington, D.C.
Mhm.
Growing up in Washington, D.C., and this is what I learned as I got older, is unlike any other city in America as far as the same things. Black doctors, Black lawyers, Black
Mhm.
professionals who
Mhm.
feel that
Mhm.
it's Chocolate City. So I say that because quite honestly, for me, I always felt like I belonged.
Mhm.
I always felt like I belonged to be in a restaurant of my choosing. I belonged to be wherever I chose to be. I never really felt that I was an outcast or that that wasn't a place for me. And I genuinely feel that a lot of that is grounded in my Cameroonian background and I see it a lot in, kind of African immigrant communities where we just have a different sensibility of it all. I think it's just innate. And it's also became a decision that I wasn't going to really allow too much other narratives to inform the place that I felt I needed to take in the world and the space I needed to take up in the world. So,
Yes to that. Oh my God. Yes to that, and also bottling it for folks like me who do not come from places where that is the norm, right? Like you said, South Africa is an exception, and we could talk about that writ large at a different place. But I think it's so important to call out as well across the globe. There are so many different ways of being Black and brown. They
Yeah,
don't all look like this dictated script that we receive in the United States. And even within the United States, what you've just said, DC does not trend like or feel like other places where you might feel more obviously different. So tell
yes,
me a little bit, because you right now are in El Salvador, right?
yes,
And you
yes.
have deep family roots there. Tell me about what Blackness,
Yeah.
brownness, what is that experience in El Salvador?
Oh, that's a great question. So El Salvador is in Central America. We're sandwiched between Guatemala and Honduras and Nicaragua. It has a very interesting history, much like the rest of Central America, one that is very much shaped by a relationship to the United States and a recent past of a not very positive relationship to the United States as far as financing a war, as far as a lot of kind of global multinationals, kind of having their way in the country and in their region. So it's a country that very much exists in the shadow of the United States, which again is very different for my life in Cameroon. That's not the case, but in El Salvador, it is. It is also one of the only countries on this peninsula from Mexico to Panama that does not have a very large African diaspora.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a number of different kind of stories around why that is, but that is the case. We're one of the only countries that only has a Pacific coast. We do not have an Atlantic Caribbean coast. Um, so it's relatively homogenous racially. So you have a largely mestizo population, as you know, that's the indigenous meeting the European mestizo population. And we don't have the racial diversity that you might find in neighboring countries. So it's very interesting because I didn't know how I was going to feel as someone who was very connected to both kind of my African American roots of being born and raised in Washington, D.C., my African roots, my work, as you know, in supporting entrepreneurs of color. And I didn't know how it was going to feel to be in a society that really didn't reflect that culture, from the music to the culture to the language. And I think that for me, it has not been as much of a lack as I maybe thought. Um, and a big part of that is, in many ways, I consider myself to have found refuge here. You know, I came at a time, and I'm here in a time of deep crisis in the US.
Mm-hmm.
Of having children in an age of school shootings, of having a brown boy in the age of police, abuse. And I had to pick what mattered the most
Yes.
for this season. I also break down my life in seasons. I no longer think of the forever house or the forever place
Yes.
or anything like that.
Yes.
But for this season of early middle childhood, I had to really kind of, find the place that felt best for me. So, all that to say, El Salvador has a very kind of different yet familiar sense of place for me. My roots are here on my mother's side as I kind of, walk the city, the town, the volcano that I know my ancestors walked around looms. That feeling is more palpable than I would have imagined. The last thing I'll say on that is, being an immigrant in the United States or the daughter of immigrants, I never quite felt like um, it was completely my place. And I was born and raised in Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm.
One would assume that you
Right.
feel very, in some ways I do, but not, I felt that America or that society always made me feel just a little bit outside of
Hmm.
what a traditional American norm was.
Yes.
An immigrant, as a Spanish speaking, daughter of African and Salvadorian, we were just outside what was considered like a traditional American kind of, composition. And so, maybe that reality has led me to not necessarily feel a deep, deep sense of despair or longing of place and home and being able to adapt really well. So.
Yeah, yeah, I appreciate that. I hear what you're saying. And just an aside, like show off my girlfriend here. She says so casually, "Oh, Spanish speaking. Excuse me, Spanish, French, English. Like, let's just keep going. Like all of numbers. This is an economist that we're talking to. Like basically like all of the things. Okay, so let's just put that out there. Next question, please. Um, I wanna peel back on what you're saying because it is so important for people to hear this. There's somebody who's listening who is on the fence and who is considering life beyond the crisis point. Like it feels like people are living in a boiler room, right? That is the United States right now. And I think one of the things that you said, which is so important, is for where I am right now in this season, this actually meets all of my needs. My
Yeah.
feel like my soul is full. And I want to ask, what were some of the things that, what was the push or the pull to El Salvador? How did you make that decision? What were the things that were like, I just, I'm out. I can't take this no more. And I'm
Yeah.
asking as somebody who is now based in Mexico, in Oaxaca, and I can tell you for me, childcare, huge lack of support for mothers in the United States without like double zero digits resources support. I was like this is not a thing. Okay, this is trash. I know that another version is possible. I'm out. What was
Right.
it for you?
So a couple of different things. For me, interestingly enough, even though I do have family in El Salvador, and sorry if they end up listening, that was not the foremost motivator. We had a short list of Central American countries that my husband and I had been to, visited, really liked. I needed time zone, so we knew if it was going to be global, it needed to kind of be in this region. But a couple of different turning points. One, my husband was running and owned a martial arts school
Mhm.
that had been very successful in suburban New Jersey. And COVID really, you
Mhm.
know, killed a lot of that dream.
Mhm.
We lost a space that he had designed and created so beautifully to then move outdoors and do martial arts in the New Jersey winters and summers and for
Yeah.
a whole year, which was very beautiful and also quite exhausting. And then we found another space, and then the next wave of COVID. So a lot of it was from him saying, I need a break and let's do a family sabbatical, which we had done. You might recall
Yes.
um, 10 years ago, we were in St. Croix for a bit. So it wasn't unusual to like unplug and do something radically different.
Yeah.
But then, another kind of strong motivator for me on the heels of George Floyd,
Mhm.
um, and being Black in America, raising an biracial family. We had moved to the suburbs and a very progressive suburb at that. And I still felt very uneasy about, particularly my son. I have a son and a daughter, being raised even in the suburbs, even in a more affluent suburb.
Yes.
Everything I had worked for and worked hard for, all the, strides and the gains, both financially and emotionally, and all of that, don't matter in America when your skin is of a certain shade. And for me, as a woman and as a professional, did I experience a lot of racism in my daily life? Not really. However, I started to see what might be coming down the pike for my son.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I started to feel like I wasn't sure if, it was going to be the safest, most hospitable place for him. Every generation, Mahahodi, and especially as immigrants, my husband, who is of European and Middle Eastern, they came turn of the century. Their names are on Ellis Island. Everyone comes, if they're coming, because they think that this life will be better for their children.
Yes. Yes.
I could no longer genuinely say that. My mother could say it.
Mm.
My husband's family could say it. And I had to wonder if that's what I could genuinely say. And when the answer was no, I don't think so, it was time to look beyond and think bigger about what our life could look like.
Yeah, that is so sobering and so well said as well. I'm a mother too, as you know, now toddler mom. And sorry, there's a dog here. And Brett is trying to hold the fort. What are we gonna do? Let her out? Could you do that now, please? Thanks. I'm waiting for you.
I'm trying to get Alicia.
Sorry, Alicia. Commercial break just for a second.
I'm so happy to see his face.
Thanks, B. Appreciate it. Excellent. Alicia, what you're saying is so resonant, and it's specifically resonant for people who share, a lot of our identities. And, one of the things that you said that really hits the nail on the head is, can you be sure that your children's life is going to be better than the promise that your parents made you? And that question leads me to another question for you, which is, I know this for sure because I've been an immigrant in the States. A lot of people sitting in the United States know that it just must exist because this is trash, right? And I'm not saying this is trash like writ large, like America has many amazing things about it, but sometimes your specific experience and nuanced experience as a person in a body like this is like what the heck? Like, give me a break. The things that you just said, I have done everything right professionally. I went to all the damn good schools. I have secured the bag, okay? I have the beautiful home in the suburbs. Like, I should be the Brady fucking Bunch, and yet still. So something must give. But what I see a lot of times in the United States is sometimes people still have a hesitation, and that can come from not really understanding what is possible on the other side, and also ingesting a lot of unfortunate, very one-sided narratives about what the other sides look like. You're in El Salvador. I think you know what the narrative is. Oh my God, it's crazy down there. There's so much war, da 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 da. Somebody with Mexico, their first reaction, and this is somebody in South Africa, which has its own narratives, which we're living through in real time right now. Thank you, Elon Musk and all the other crazy neo-Nazis. But somebody who I love and who is a brilliant person in South Africa was like Mexico? Cartel land? What are you doing?
Right.
Here's the question. It's not only about the person who is curious about what's on the other side, but once you're starting to taste something different that is possible, how do you bring other people on that journey with you? How did you convince larger family, relatives? People always have opinions, and whether we take those opinions in or not, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about moving yourself and your family. Like, for me, at least, that meant there were a lot of stakeholders that I needed to bring on this adventure and journey. What were some of the tools that you used that people should be writing down?
Hey, pull up. Just you and me for a second. Are you an exec, a founder, or an entrepreneur who's sick of shrinking in rooms you're overqualified to lead? It's time to stop playing small and start owning your expertise. But how, Mahogodi? Girl, I got you. I offer coaching that helps women of color just like you to claim your place as a thought leader. Whether you want to command a room, craft and share your signature story, or finally get that book out of your head and onto bookshelves, I've got the strategy and spicy accountability that you need. If you're tired of seeing less qualified folks shine while you stay behind the scenes, girl, the wait list is open. Follow the link in show notes to stop waiting for permission and claim your VIP spot now. My mission? Helping women just like you to snatch the spotlight, shake the table, and take your damn seat at the top already. No begging, no detours, and nope, no apologies. Just bold ass moves.
You know, I'm really fortunate that most people understood. There wasn't a whole lot of convincing about the deeper why. Most people could look around and kind of understand. And because I can work virtually, because, you know, my husband's business was so up and down, I think a lot of people understood are framing it as a break, which is exactly
Yes.
what I did at first. And I would say, and it sounds like you're doing the same. Let's see.
Yes.
Adventure slash sabbatical slash break. Okay. And some people come back from it and some people don't. So the initial conversations were all about, we're going to take a year and see what it's like, and that our kids are young enough to where they're easily or more easily mobile than they'll be deeper in adolescence. And so we'll bring them along. My mother, I was so fortunate. My mother had been an immigrant in the United States for over 50 years. When we sat her down to tell her we were considering going back to her home country, she looked at us as if we had many, many heads, not just two.
I came
I came to bring you here for you to go. You have a beautiful home. You have everything.
you.
For. So that was her reaction. And she since came back with us and moved back into the home of her mother after 55 years, left at 18, back at 75 to share the last couple of years of her mother's life with her. And my grandmother recently passed. On the other side, you know, for my husband's family, again, mostly understanding, but also particularly for my in-laws, my husband's parents, with whom we were very close with the children and the whole thing. I think they were probably hit the hardest.
Yes.
And were the most vocal about thinking that it was not a good idea. And you know, it was a hard conversation. We had it at a restaurant. I'm not sure why we chose that venue. Should have been a bit more private. And so that was hard. And you know, they've since come around because they have visited us and fully understand everything. But I think basically the fact that we weren't saying goodbye forever.
Yes.
And you know, it's not so far. And this really is an exciting thing that we think we want to do with our family, was a lot of the framing. But to your second point around the narratives of what it's like to live, or what it's like to move to a country that exists in the news stories of the United States only as a terrible place.
Yes.
A place of deep migration, at the time, the murder capital of the world, which is what El Salvador was up until very recently, of deep poverty, of people waiting in line to come here, all of the things.
Yes.
You know, I've started to believe, Mahahodi, and this might feel extreme or radical, between the, you know, what is it, the State Department warnings,
yes,
and the news cycle. After being here and having a lot of friends now that I'm in community with who have expatted, you start to wonder if it's by design. That not just labeling other countries as like terrible so that you don't want to go visit, but is there something on the other side that might be so beautiful and life affirming that we don't want people to really experience? Because I don't know why else the narrative so strongly points to other countries, especially in the global South, Latin America, and Africa, as the most terrible places you could ever imagine going.
Yes.
And then you go and almost, universally, you
Yes.
can't believe that that's what the indoctrination is. So, I just imagine that it is, something that is by design. But I do have to say something that I do feel, and that has become a bit more strong as I've moved abroad. And you said this, and so I want to highlight it. America, during my time as a young professional, as a university student, early in my career, working the ladder and the networking was the most ideal place for me. We were in
Mm-hmm.
pillar circles in New York
Yes.
City,
Yes.
expansive professional community building, okay? Expansive opportunities. And that's why people go to America. The thing is, Mahahodi, once you need something else, once that maybe box has been checked on a certain level, whatever your definition is, and you're now looking for rest, for beauty, for
Yes.
better health outcomes, for better outcomes for your children, for a nicer society where there's maybe people who are just walk a little bit more slowly
Yes.
and can say good morning. Once there are other things beyond just being good at capitalism,
Yeah.
you start to wonder if there's other lifestyles.
It's,
But I had to say, it is now in this season that I am able to kind of feel empowered to look beyond. But the US for that grind season was, the right choice for me. And it's what I knew. And
yeah.
it's built for that.
Yeah, I'm glad. I'm really glad. The way that you put it is both so hilarious, but also so apt, like that capitalism kind of beast. It is that. And there is a certain season sometimes in our lives where we are really hard at work. And being in a place like New York is so expansive. I want to talk about something. I want to do two things. I want to talk about some things that feel a little bit more not logistical, but tools, right?
Yeah.
Offering people real tools, and especially where you're sitting now, because I feel I'm way too fresh to be able to tell somebody exactly some of the things looking back that I wish I had done differently.
Oh,
But
yeah.
I'm curious about this, and I'm going to ask you specifically about specific things that are around moving and, whether it's a sabbatical or it's something that becomes longer term. I love the framing. This is a pro tip, anyone who's listening. Starting your family or anybody else that you need to sell this idea on, because you will have to sell it as an idea and an adventure, is first of all, how do you make it an adventure that everybody is coming on, including the people who live full time in the States? But also, how do you make it something that's not scary by saying this is a sabbatical? We'll see what happens, because you don't have enough data at the beginning. I certainly don't. Like, who knows what's going to happen at the end of a full year, right? So I want to talk about the things that are practical that somebody needs to think about, but I also want to put a pin in the conversation because you are such, like my friends. Like, we are talking about one of the most brilliant business minds on the planet, right? And when I think about unplugging, a lot of people who are also badasses in their business, they're definitely going to have some fears around what about my business? How do I keep this thriving and growing? And it's all nice, peaches and cream, what you're talking about. Two words that you use that word like ding, 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 emotional safety, spiritual sustenance and safety in El Salvador. That's all well and nice. I want that, but girl, like, I gotta eat. Like, how's the emotional goodness and like spiritual sustenance gonna keep this business that is so US focused? How's that gonna work? So we'll come back to that conversation in a minute, but let's start with the super practical thing of looking back now.
Yeah.
You were to speak to yourself in the moving phase. What do you know about really practical things, legal considerations, visa, all of that? It might be different for you because, again, this is a heritage country for you. This is your home country, right? So there's that. There's, super logistical things like moving the kids, the babies, the health care. What is
Yes.
that? what does it cost? Like, how do you think about finances? Because this is something that will take money. How do I find a home? Just any and all of the things that you want to touch on. Doesn't have to be all of them, but logistic, like practically and some tangible, like how would you think about it retrospectively, having done it?
Wow. Yes. So we started with the inspiration and a conversation. That was the first door opener, seed planter, where it felt absolutely ridiculous the first time we said it out loud. And then it became less and less ridiculous over the course of a couple of weeks. Then
Mm,
came the site visit.
mm.
You must go to the country or countries
Yes.
that you are thinking about and look at it not from being on holiday, because that's one
Yes.
thing, but look at it as the housing, the commute around town, the daily life expectations of what it would be like. And so that's one of the things we did. And then the third thing, or maybe second, I'm not sure where I am, join online communities. I joined Blacksit, which is Black Americans exiting the United States. I joined just, kind of regular expat groups. And that was wonderful as far as, again, tactical, logistical questions, as you just mentioned. And also, Mahahodi, building a community of badasses who leaped
Mhm.
and getting to know their profiles, almost being inspired by hundreds of other people and their moves to Thailand or
Yes.
Morocco or wherever they were going. So those were some of the early things that I did. Once we did our site visit and we looked at schools, I, put 4 on the list and, we went to go see them and looking at housing and understanding the price points of everything. Then it just became like an exercise in running numbers and creating a plan. So there was the very real kind of like aspect of first renting our home in the suburbs as, an in between, finding, working with a real estate professional who was very, who knew this community in El Salvador very well, going through the school logistics. I would say if we're back to some of the stakeholders, my children were of an age where they needed to be a stakeholder. They were at
Mm.
6 and 9. We also told them it was a short adventure. So going back to how to frame this to everyone, that it was going to be a very fun family adventure, and we would try to find a place with a pool and all of the little goodies that you can throw in for children to go along for the ride. I'm going to also just say one other logistical thing that also melts into a little bit of the emotional call to action. I relied heavily on friends to talk this through.
Mhm.
Not just people who had done it, but people who I could really get to the bottom of like what I was leaving and going towards, and I needed to hear myself. I needed to get guidance. And then I also sought guidance from my spiritual
Mm.
power. There became some things that I felt like I exhausted my friends. I'm talking about it all the time. I'm logistically, going toward full speed ahead, but I asked the universe to open doors or close them. Said
Mm.
this decision is
Mm.
too big for just me.
Mm.
And yes, I have my husband, who we're thinking about this together, but I need you to open doors or close them. And
Mm.
Mahakoti, every door was open. The first people who came to our house rented it. We thought we were going to continue at a school and then decided that it was not going to, some incidents happened randomly that led us to believe that was not going to be the place for us. New York being the epicenter of COVID was starting to feel more and more oppressive. And, there's a real PTSD that was happening
Yes.
in that particular community. But I found myself as a work from homer, literally in my bathrobe every day, not wanting to leave. And
Mm.
much more and more like I was just being expelled. And that came from asking for guidance. So I think that, sometimes decisions like this require all the tools in the toolbox to make. And then on the other side, things were easy. The logistics were rather easy. El Salvador, as a lot of countries do, have a very liberal visa policy. It's 180 days before you have to go back to the States. That's 6 months, which means that, there's really no problems there. Healthcare is far more affordable. It's much, I love healthcare here, actually. Deep disparities, I'm not going to glamorize, between public services for people that lack access and private services. But what I will say is that, and you might see this in Mexico, there's a much more entrepreneurial aspect to help you. The lady comes and she gives me my multivitamin, like injection.
Extra paperwork, and let's
Yes.
make something that it's not to the point.
Yes. WhatsApp, and the next day I broke my arm. The lady's here for physical therapy. I need blood work. They're here to draw my blood. Everything comes to you. It's a very kind of, more human approach. And I have to say, Mahahodi, I had some health issues in the first year. And I would tell my friends back home, the way I was treated in the health industry here, the care and concern was mind-blowing. That was one of the staying things. When we got to the end of the year, we had to do an audit. Health and wellness, not just from having fresh fruit delivered to my door, whatever, through the trucks and all of that, but the human approach to wellness and illness was mind-blowing. So I say all of that because even after arriving, things just fell into place really beautifully. So it's all of the traditional things that you would do in the States when you're moving somewhere else. Get yourself a good realtor, the schools. And then, to your other question, whenever you want to leap there, how do you continue to thrive?
Yes.
A professional,
Yes. And not only how do you continue to thrive? I mean, one of the things that has been such a source of joy and inspiration watching you over the years is it seems from the outside looking in that you actually have grown by leaps and bounds because of, right? So this is if you're listening, okay, I need you to really pay attention here because this is the good news. This is truly the good news. It's not just that we're talking to your fears and making it really clear that, your fears are legitimate. It's a really good question to ask. How am I going to continue this business that I've built or this career that I've built? Yeah. But could you allow yourself to imagine that something more, something better, something bigger is possible for you, that you can expand your career and your business because of the move? And I would love, love, love to hear about that.
Oh my gosh, I love that you're asking that, Mahohodi. You just hit the nail on the head. And I was having a conversation with another expat friend who moved to Colombia. And we were just saying that both of our careers have taken off since making this. And you're absolutely right. And thank you for the observation. I worked more part-time when I was in the States as a mother, as a working mother, and needing to hold the emotional and physical weight of what it takes to be a mother in the United States was my other part-time job. I bow down to women who work 40, 50, 60 hours a week and raise children and do all of the things. I don't know how they did it. I could not. I had to sacrifice more work in order to just absorb all of the things that are needed as a working mother in the States. So one of the first things that happened pretty quickly as I moved here, and I was doing work I loved with an organization that I loved. And as soon as I moved here, and I told you, I'd been working part-time, I just had all this new space and energy, like instantaneous. And at first it was, you're in the hammock, you're going to the beach, and then it became restless space and energy that felt like creative budding of something that was about to take shape. And for me, working in the entrepreneurship space and the social impact space, I started filling that time in deep curiosity about my sector and how it looked here in this region, and starting to see that there were gaps in some of the things that existed here that I had seen and been part of building in the United States. So I started to feel a deeper calling professionally. And, that's what ended up happening. But on the very logistical front, here you do have help. It is a place, once you move, and this is sometimes a taboo conversation. And I have to say, Mahahori, it's sometimes a conversation that I have mixed feelings about, but I've learned to kind of be gentle and open about the reality of what it is like to be able to afford household help in a way that you never could back in the States, to be part of an economy where that is accessible,
Yes.
and to make use of that economy where that is accessible. And I remember going back to the States and talking to people who weren't really friends, but friends of friends, and there's a little bit of hate that comes up when you describe that your life feels more leisurely and that there's helping hands for your children and that it allows you to, and that the women all around me, they're beautiful. They look well rested.
Yeah.
They going to the sports things and the things, and they look amazing, and and they're relaxed. And they're relaxed in a way I never saw back home. And so, there's a very real truth that women here, mothers here, feel like that have it all is just a little bit more attainable. I would have never, I've been very blessed over the last 2 or 3 years with my company. It's grown exponentially. It's grown beyond what I envisioned. And it's because I had space to dream into, and then the very real pragmatic space of getting work done, while other things were handled by my husband, by, I have a housekeeper, all of these other things that were able to I have an enabling environment now that allows for me to thrive. My kids' school has all of the activities there. This idea of picking up and bouncing around to go all over town is no longer a reality. And so there was very real space. There was a lot of inspiration that came from listening to what I wanted to do. And that gave way to my ability to dive all the way back in, and build something beautiful.
Oh, you've said so many important things. And I think one of the biggest takeaways for me from listening to you, and I want to call it out because it is such a huge, especially for us, because we are Black and brown and beautiful and glorious, and we are players at a global stage, right? Life for us and the consequences and thinking through things like care for us, it's specific. And what I mean by that is, for me, the experience of being a mother in the United States was like, this is not something that I can do. And the amount of care and support that I knew was possible because I grew up in South Africa was completely different. So that thing that you're talking about counterparts, our peers in the States, hating on you a little bit because they're like, girl, like they're eye rolling, like whatever. At this and also at the same time, they might throw something to you like, yeah, but not everybody in South Africa has access to that. And that's what I want to talk about. Not necessarily like, let's go deep into it, but I just want to call it out and say those two things are true and they exist at the same time. Do I and does every single fucking mother deserve the kind of care and support that she wants and desires to be able to fulfill herself completely? You better like put all your money on the bank on that, okay? Are there systemic issues that exist that means Alicia and I coming into these economies, we are coming in at a very different place and we have privilege and access at a very different place. That's true. I also want to challenge that because I did not grow up at the top of the pyramids, like very, 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 like really back. Okay. It was very different when my mom was raising us as a single mother, and we always had help. Always. We always had help in the house.
Yeah.
And not only did we always have help in the house, but it was so clear from both understanding these particular women's lives and also other women who are in our family who were caregivers, that employment was not for nothing, okay? Like it was real opportunities for these folks to be able to work the way that they did. Now, were there structural things that I could sit here forever? Like, girl, I have a whole book. Okay, go read the book. It dives into domestic labor and what some of the things that are complicated about that when it's racialized, when it comes from colonization, blah, 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 blah. I'm just here to like, just for the person who's listening and is like, oh, that's nice for y'all because like, you know, you've just swooped in with American dollars. Yes, and yes,
Yes.
and
Yes, and you just said something incredibly important that everyone should know, and this is more limited for people who have never really traveled in the world, is that most people at varying socioeconomic classes have help in the house.
yes,
My Salvadorian side, we did not have a lot of money growing up, very working class. There was always someone in the house helping. Okay. So that is not always reserved for the uber rich the way it is in the United States. So let's not bring the same frame to other countries where that is just not the case. It is far more affordable to be able to have help in the home. And the other thing is that even at extreme kind of, people who live in more of the countryside, people who have far fewer resources, they tend to live communally.
yes.
And so they tend to pool their resources and have help in that way. So whether it's paid help in your home or you're just living next to your aunt and your cousin and someone is there for you and you're taking turns helping each other out, much like going to back to my my upbringing in Washington D.C. and my mother in this apartment building with other immigrants from around the world who would cook and work. So there's always an element of communal living at different levels. So I say that because it is a nuanced conversation. As women who care about other women, we should absolutely be in conversation about the exploitation of women and labor and all of that. It is something that's at the forefront. However, we do need to just be curious and not necessarily always come with massive assumptions based on a more limited worldview.
Yeah, hello. Amen. Amen to all of that. I'm going to return to the community conversation because it's something that I'm living through in real time. I have a question for you that I think would be pertinent to anybody who's considering either a sabbatical or something long term. How do you then build the community that you're going to need to sustain you once you're on the other side? But before we get there, I want to dive a little bit more into the brilliance that is your business. Tell people what is it that you do? Because one of the things that I think is so powerful is not only being able to see it, but also to imagine it, to name it. And what you're doing is so outside of the box for a lot of people being like what you do, what? Like give us a taste of what it is and what some of the, I mean, you've already told us about the enabling environment, but maybe you can also give us a little bit of some of the seeds that were like, wait, this connects with this and this connects with this, and put those things together. We can really bake something brilliant here.
Yes, absolutely. So I am in the world of fundraising, Mahahodi, and I help social enterprise leaders find the capital that they need for their businesses or nonprofits to launch, grow, and thrive. So everything from creating strategies for nonprofits to be able to grow their donor base to supporting impact fund managers. Those are people who have portfolios of companies, find the capital that they need, to supporting founders in figuring out how to raise capital for their enterprises, be it debt capital or find investors, and always with this social impact lens. And so I firmly believe that we have incredible, brilliant, talented problem solvers, and they just are not always resourced in the way that they deserve. And that a lot come from communities such as this, communities such as DC, communities in Cameroon. And that if we are truly looking to make the world a better place, we need to resource the people who are in the front lines of doing that and resource them in ways that match the scale of what they're trying to do. What I tend to see is that the biggest, and we know this from our world, it's not talent, it's resources and connections and ability to kind of find people who believe in them and will be able to invest in them. And that's where I come in as the bridge between creators and funders so that they can meet each other and be in relationship to one another. And on the other side of the fence, I work with investors and foundations looking to place capital in under-resourced communities and looking to find the best and brightest organizations and entrepreneurs to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things that I think is fantastic about you, if you go on your website, is you describe yourself as one of the few people who believes fundraising is so much fun, right? And who's like nerding out and like, yes, let's go fundraising. Everybody else's stomach is turning like, oh God, asking for money.
Yes, I do. I love it because my mindset
Yeah.
is not one that allows for all the fear and scarcity. So much of fundraising is mindset stuff and is worthiness stuff
Yeah.
and money stuff. And so what I do is teach and train and empower people to step into their worthiness so that they can capitalize themselves exponentially. So how is that not the funnest thing in the world to do? To be able to help people understand and seek out their value and then create projects that are good for the environment and women and children. So I am so energized by it. And again, moving here has only kind of made that even stronger. One of the ways is I'm now more proximate to a lot of the communities kind of in need. And so much of my work is grounded in trust. And so being able to not just be in Washington or New York talking about the needs in Latin America and other places, but being able to be here and see them firsthand has enabled me to be better at what I do. And again, the space and time that I'm given living in the tropics with more sun and more softness and stillness allows me to tap into a deeper sense of empathy and creativity that I bring to the work. And so, I do absolutely love fundraising, and I do love it because of what it is able to unlock for brilliant people. And I have the best time meeting the coolest, most interesting people in the world who are just designing and creating and eliminating the obstacles around scarcity that no longer serve them. So,
Oh my God, Alicia. I mean, the last sentence, which very much echoes this conversation around worth and
yeah,
fundraising and money, and
yes,
even the conversation that we're zeroed in on, right? The worthiness, you are worthy. You deserve to have a soft, abundant. Is it going to be hard life? Like, is there going to be hard stuff that happens? Of course. Is there going to be things that frustrate you about your new place? Duh, of course. We're on planet
yeah,
Earth. But
yes,
like this, like just the fundamentals of being at peace, the fundamentals of not feeling like your day to day is you're throttled and you don't have enough space in your mind, in your body to be able to feel yourself and then also to tap into your dreams. Like every fucking human being, but especially like my good sis out there, like Brack, brown woman, like nobody deserves this more than us. Everybody deserves it, but nobody more than us, right? Um, I had to get on my soapbox and preach about that because it's just, and that's the thing that I think is such a huge opportunity if you open up your lens a little bit, your aperture beyond, oh, it would be nice to move to a sunny place. Let me think about the South. The South is great. And for some people, that might be the tea. But for me personally, that just wasn't gonna make sense, right? There's a whole world and it is yours. There is
yes.
an entire globe.
There is. And we both use the word soft, and I want to use it again. And I use it in combination with soft, slow, and sweet.
Say
And
it
it's
again. Say
soft,
it again.
slow, and sweet.
Oof.
We weren't raised that way. We didn't see our mothers experience any of those three. And we're their wildest dream and our ancestors' wildest dream. And we have been educated, we have done the grind, we have succeeded, and yet we're unwell and we're unhealthy. And if you think about ambition, will it come from stress and speed and, just kind of the world of mania? I believe that it comes from a place of rest and refuge. And so I love that you've weaved in this topic of professional women, because there are lots of people who see people who expat and now they're laying in a hammock eating a mango. Oh, and maybe, beading something beautiful. Maybe they're making bracelets. They're living a different kind of life than the one that women like you and I prepared ourselves for educationally and professionally. I want those women who university, grad school, entrepreneurs, executives to see themselves in this lifestyle as well. That would feel so affirming, because I do feel like what the world needs now is more soft, sweet, and slow, not just as an esoteric desire, but as an embodiment. And when you attach that to the ferocious training that we have as professionals, the minds that have been shaped in the networks that we have, we're unstoppable in whatever we want to do. So I really invite you all out there to consider what it looks like to go to the place that loves you back. And the last thing I'll say on that note, because it feels very important to me, and I at times have this love-hate relationship with this idea that we just need to be really positive and embrace and enjoy wherever we are. There is room for that, yes. You are never going to escape the need for therapy, the need for whatever you do as a human being to feel whole. Me being here is not going to chase any demons out that I need to work on. But I really want to offer the reality that environment matters.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that for me, an everyday gray, both physically and emotionally, mindsets that were critical and pessimistic did not fit the worldview of let me just try to be more positive about where I am. You need to learn to distinguish those two. And it's a very important interpersonal conversation to be had, because I've had friends who have expatted and their demons came with them and they went right back and it didn't work.
Yeah.
And so you need to be clear with yourself around what you're chasing, what you're leaving, in order to get the fullness of what this could be for you.
Yeah. And what do you need to thrive, right?
Yes.
I mean, you've said so many things, and that is such a huge bit of it. How do you get to know yourself really well to understand this is exactly the kind of location I need in order to thrive, and the environment that I need to thrive? It's going to be different for everybody, but you need to do the homework on that. I want to talk about, this is my last big question, and it's the pin that we put around community, and specifically thinking about this professional woman that you have so beautifully given some color to, right? We're not talking about moving overseas to start, I'm never going to be a macrame person. It's just not me. No hate to macrame. It's just not me. Okay. What I want to know for this particular person is community. Like what exists on the other side? And I'm asking this, I want to just shamelessly admit, this is a selfish question. I have now moved to Oaxaca. I'm very fresh, just finished 3 months in Oaxaca. And I'm now at the point where, okay, I've got a lot of the logistical things. I'm kind of, I've got the day-to-day, there's a household, there's a hum to things. but like, where are my people at?
Oh,
Right?
yeah.
And that question is multi-layered. It's how did you find your people that are like, this is my girls' night, like queens. We do girls' nights together. How did you conceptualize? I mean, you have like brilliant things for your business too, where you're thinking about networking. Like, I love Well Connected all day. I mean, like that event is so smart. And that's the kind of thing that I'm curious about. Like, what does networking look like on the other side?
Yeah.
Professional networking. And what does just being intentional about right community and right relationship, what does that actually look like when you're somewhere that's completely far away from the deep networks that we did build in at New York City or Washington, D.C., or some of the other places that we're more familiar with. And I do want to say something that I think, like, I cannot underscore this enough in what you said. The aha moment and the revolutionary, like the world can actually be what we dare to imagine it to be, that will happen when more of us give ourselves permission, our peers, you and I, when more of us give ourselves permission to actually step into being the bridge somewhere very wildly different from where you were born. Maybe it is somebody moving over to New York from Soweto because that's what they need in their life right now, right? Maybe it's somebody crisscrossing from El Salvador to Lisbon. But what is possible when we become the bridges and stop waiting for somebody else to be on like the teleport, making the call and like being the power broker, like holding that level of power to say, oh, here's what they need over there. That is such a game changer. It's such a game changer.
Oh, I love that. And first of all, let's not forget that we come from a lot of us, who are either immigrants ourselves or our parents were our great grandparents. Someone was bold and moved.
Yes.
Let's not forget that that is in our DNA.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's just, it's called something else, maybe when you are seeking opportunity, when you are fleeing war, when you are a refugee, but someone decided that home.
Right?
Right, exactly. And so we come from people who have always sought greener pastures for the reasons that felt important to them. As far as community, it's a work in progress, but I one of the things that struck me immediately was that I was attracting similar entrepreneurial, energetic people, that had not necessarily been the case back in suburban New Jersey. It just wasn't what my community kind of looked like. I had put that out, that intention was very real, and it started to come my way. And then I joined a group. I joined one of them is called Her, and it's this group of women professionals here in El Salvador, entrepreneurs, other, executives who get together in these beautifully curated, magical experiences that the founders create for us. And it's like a membership group. And it is so nourishing and inspiring. And that's something I do. I also have this group of friends from my daughter's school. We're sixth grade moms. We get together monthly in someone's home, and there's wine and there's gossip and all of it. And this is where I learn about the gossip because I don't know the gossip. I'm new. This is where I get to hear what's happening at school and what is this and what is this and different societal elements. And you realize, wow, this is how women have gotten their information
Yep.
about society. And so I'm part of that. And, and then I have a couple of good friends that I see occasionally, but it is a work in progress for me to find a bestie. If I'm being honest, my besties are still in the States. They
Mhm.
come and visit me. I have someone here every other month, and we go to the beach and we hang out. And when we talk about seasons, for me, I'm deep in work mode and mother mode and building mode and wifing mode and all of the things. And I have such strong friendships that sustain and nourish me that I have to admit I am still on the search for like that trusting, like bestie person that is like my BFF here in El Salvador. I don't know if I've really like put myself out there 110% or if I have the time or I feel nurtured and satisfied by the relationships and networks that I've built. And to be a bit of an ambassador now when people want to come to
Yes.
El Salvador, as
Mm.
you'll, and once you move, people want to come. And so I am still, it's ever evolving and it feels wonderful. And it's also reminds me of the close friendships I have back in the States because they're still my best friends.
Yes.
And so that feels like the most necessary thing for this season.
Yeah. And, we don't get to like check out of the best friend box because we moved somewhere else, right?
Right.
Like we know how to get on the planes. And one thing that I really want to call out is when you live in a place as gorgeous, I mean, yo, folks, do yourself a favor and check out like the Instagrammable things. For
Yeah.
example, Well Connected, what she's put together. Like your mouth is, you're just gonna be salivating. Like, how do I get an invitation, right? And I say that because it creates room for more intentionality around the communities that actually matter to you. You can be down the street from somebody living together in DC and never see them because of this super busy, super capitalist world that is the United States. You could see them lucky once a year. And the difference is when you live far away in a magical place that people actually want to come and visit, suddenly that same person who was down the street from you is knocking at your door and is staying for a week. And you actually have to get like this PJ party that is like you've never experienced this person like that before.
Mahawadi, I just have to co-sign that because this is part of my leaving journey. I was booking my friends 30 days in advance who live down the street.
Yes,
That's just the
yes,
life. That's the
yes.
life back in New York, New Jersey, DC. That's the life.
They
And
love you.
they love you. But that started to feel very hollow. And here, my husband and I have described it as quality versus quantity. We have gotten to know uncles, aunts of,
Yes,
the older
yes,
generation, cousins, nieces who hop on a flight from Houston and they're with us and our kids.
yes.
It's you get to learn about people in much more profound ways. And then about Well Connected, which I want to say I co-host with our dear friend Liz Long,
Ah,
who you
yes,
and,
Liz.
but we built the intentionality of community.
Mhm.
That was my yearning to do something in El Salvador. That was Liz's yearning to be my bridge because she had actually worked here for a number of years. You don't see it, and so you create it yourself, and so that's my social impact community that I bring together every year, on how to build community around these beautiful topics around social entrepreneurship. But yes, you build it, you find it, you say yes to it. This group of mothers that, I barely get a word in edgewise. I'm there to wine and I don't talk hardly. They're not, no one's really asking me that many questions, but I'm in the mix and they've invited me in. So
Yeah.
it's fun to, experiment and say yes and have the time to do it.
It's beautiful. That's beautiful. I'm going to ask you one last question, and it's a snippy question because it goes to the gumption that it takes to be this person. You are her, right? You are part of a network that is called her, but you're also very much her. You have embodied these big, beautiful things that you dreamed of for a really long time and had the audacity to say, I'm gonna just be her. Where does that kind of courage come from for you today, now?
Courage begets courage.
Mm,
When you leap and risk and it works out, you continue to leap and risk and assume it will work out. This experience of moving abroad with two children, a
mm,
husband, leaving everything was probably one of the more courageous acts. And I did it and I won. And there's nothing that I now feel like I can't replicate that. So you build the muscle and you know that it's going to work out beautifully in the way that, in my case, God intends it to. I just think you have to flex that muscle. If not, your life will shrink. If you don't answer the seed, the calling, I believe that you're instead shrinking rather than expanding. And so that's what gives me the courage today, is knowing that I've done some things and it's worked out. And I've done some things and it hasn't worked out, and that's okay too. But it's about trusting that it's going to be fine, whether it works out or not. It's going to be beautiful. And you're just in the flow of a bigger plan for yourself. So.
And a bigger plan, as you so beautifully said. I thought it was so brilliant. And I thought also only a beautiful Black, brown woman could say this, that a huge adventure like this also has to include that spiritual sustenance and that spiritual grounding of God, like, you better take the wheel, because ancestors, do you see me right now? Like, where do you want me? Where do you want, like, show me, close the doors, open the doors, which is such a powerful prayer. It's such a powerful prayer.
You don't have anything to lose by asking for divine guidance and then seeing what happens. And so I always say there's certain things that are just beyond our ability to plan. No, we exhaust our friends, just, ask for divine, the infinite source of energy and wisdom, and see what happens.
Yeah. Listen, this has been so nourishing, spiritually, emotionally, logistically. I've got like some real tips of important, practical things that I can do. And beginning with something I want to call out, join networks that matter. I cannot thank you enough for your time, for your brilliance, for your work, for that gorgeous smile. And I can't wait to hug you in person, either in Oaxaca or El Salvador. It's happening.
Oh my gosh, I feel the same way. Thank you for creating this portal to talk about it. I feel like I manifested this. My friend, my fellow expat in Colombia, we were like, we need to talk about this more because it's so beautiful.
Yeah.
And we need to empower other people to make the leap if they so choose. So thank you, Mahahodi, for this container. It's such an honor to see you and to be with you and to be part of your journey and everything that you create. And I will see you in Oaxaca or El Salvador.
Yes.